We're going over posterior to face.
Importance of the goal. Necessity of the labor is a requirement. Since the Creator gives man a present, he wants man to feel the benefit in the present. Otherwise, that person would be like a fool, as our sages said. Who is a fool? He who loses what he is given, because he does not appreciate the importance of the matter. He does not watch over the present closely. There is a rule that one feels no importance in anything if one has no need for that thing, and as the measure of the need and the suffering if one does not attain it. So one senses gladness, pleasure, and joy at the time of fulfillment of the need. It is similar to one who is given all sorts of beverages, but if one is not thirsty, he tastes nothing, as it is written, as cold waters to a faint soul.
No fulfillment without a need. Hence, when meals are set to please the people, there is a custom. As we prepare meat and fish and all sorts of good things, we take note to serve bitter and piquant things, such as mustard, hot peppers, sour, and salty foods. All of this is to evoke the suffering of hunger, since when the hearts taste the piquant and bitter flavor, it evokes hunger and deficiency, which one needs to satisfy the meal of good things. We should not ask, why do I need things to arouse hunger? After all, the host should only prepare fulfillment for the need, meaning the meal, and not prepare things that evoke the need for the fulfillment. The obvious answer is that since the host wants the people to enjoy the meal to the extent that they have a need for the food, to that very extent they will enjoy the meal. It follows that if he will give many good things, it will still not help them enjoy the meal, due to the above reason that there is no fulfillment without a need.
Posterior before the face. Hence, to be awarded the light of God, there must always be a need, and the need for it is the labor. To the extent that one exerts and demands the Creator during the greatest concealment, to that extent one becomes needy of the Creator. This means that the Creator will open his eyes to walk by the path of the Creator. Then when one has that kli, vessel, of a deficiency, when the Creator gives him some help from above, one will already know how to keep this present. It turns out that the labor is considered achalaim, posterior, and when one receives the achalaim, posterior, one has room in which to be awarded the panim, face. It is said about that a fool has no wish for wisdom. This means that he does not have a strong need to exert to obtain wisdom. Thus he has no achalaim, posterior, and he naturally cannot be awarded the discernment of panim, face. This is the meaning of, as is the sorrow, so is the reward. That is, the sorrow, called effort, makes the kli vessel, so one can be awarded the reward. This means that to the extent that one regrets, to that extent, one can later be rewarded with joy and pleasure. 117, you labored and did not find, do not believe, from the article Shamati by Baal HaSulam.
So what do you think of the Shamati article? Any thoughts?
I mean, it's pretty self-explanatory, I would say. I mean, just like any other thing, I mean, there's no light without a vessel, and the only job on our part is to create the vessel, the desire, the need. The fulfillment is there waiting for you. That's not our job. It's just to create the need.
Yeah, and I would say that here the biggest thing is that then in food we use hot pepper, sour, and salty food to create that efficiency. But it's like it's not so clear in everything else. And this is the same strategy you use for everything that you want in life and in spirituality. Every time you know that you want something, but you don't have the strength to do it, you need to get these things. But that's like that I'm struggling with. Like, where can I get this salty stuff? I mean, literally, like, yeah, you could say simple things, but it's really, what makes me want to eat salty stuff? Yeah, you want to have importance to the goal. But still, that goes completely against you. Like, what is the transition?
So if you look at foods, for example, there's normally two kinds of foods. There's foods that cause us tension, which is what we'd call salty or spicy or bitter foods. And then you have foods that give us pleasure, which are normally sweet foods, for example. And the idea is that the pleasurous foods don't have any tension within them. They're very straightforward. They don't cause us any movement. Right? They feel good. And the foods that cause us tension are those bitter and spicy foods that cause a deficiency. So you could basically say that in every desire, we've got the posterior, which are tension, and then you have the face, which is relaxation. It's comfortable. So that is, you always have to go through scenarios of tension in order to reach the opposing relaxation, enjoyment. And that can be in any desire. For example, if you're working for a job, so when you have that tension of getting the job, that builds in you that deficiency, that desire to actually have the job and enjoy the job when you actually get it. Well, if someone, let's say, for example, you're trying to find a job and you're making calls. If you get the first call, then your enjoyment of the job is not going to be very high, since it's like, well, it just came to me, I got it. It was the first job available, minimum wage, and I got in, right? No one gets excited when they go work for, a minimum paying job. But if someone is working hard and they've been searching and they've been rejected, and then finally they're able to find the job they want and get in, then they're so excited when they get in the job. So you could say that the tension, the build-up of tension, is basically building that deficiency. And when that deficiency gets reduced, then that's your enjoyment of it.
But how do you get yourself to wanting to be at that state of looking for the job, of that suffering? Because it is a suffering. So how do you close your eyes and put whatever is going into your mouth and hope that it's sweet, but it's salty? Oh my goodness, it's salty.
There's two kinds of suffering. There's suffering, you could say, from the present, and there's suffering from the future. The difference is there's two ways you could be suffering for a job. One is suffering because you don't have any money and you're not going to have any food. And that's what causes you the suffering. So the suffering is not that you haven't found a job yet. The suffering is that you've run out of food, right? And that's suffering from the present. Suffering from the future is because you want a future desire. That means you want a job in the future. And you're feeling pain because you don't have that future state. That is posterior. So if you're just suffering from your present state, that's not called posterior. Posterior is in relation to the face. That's why you eat bitter foods before eating good foods. But there's no point just eating bitter foods just for the sake of it. So the idea is you want to feel the tension towards the future, not feel the tension of the present. And that what that means is that what normally happens is the only thing that actually moves us forward is if we have tension in our lives in the present. That means without anything to do with the goal or anything to do with advancement. And the idea is to get to the point where you actually attract to yourself situations of tension, but towards a future state, towards a future thing. That if you look at your state, you're like, I don't actually have any problems in life. And then you're like, so why are you stressed? Why are you in pain? Well, because I want something more. And because I don't have that more, I don't know how to get it. That's what causes me the pain. So the pain is not in my present. The pain is pain towards the future. And that's why each degree, you have the darkness and the spirit, but they're towards the next degree. So you've got the posterior of each degree is that darkness and spirit before you get into the face. The difference is the darkness is when you're feeling the pain part that you don't know how to get there, or you're feeling the opposition of your next phase. And then spirit is when you're already like waiting for the meal, you're waiting for it to come, you know it's going to come and you're ready for it, and you know you just have to do some final corrections or cleaning concepts and you'll get there. And this is on every degree. So the idea is that when we're talking about posterior, it's posterior in relation to the face. And so it's suffering because of the future, not suffering because of the present.
Zach, does the willingness to go through that suffering, is it what causes that? For example, I'm just thinking of the host or the system providing that opportunity. I could just be, I'm kind of thirsty. I'm going to go for a glass of water. But if I eat hot peppers at prior to this moment, I'm really gonna want to get that glass of water. So that increased my desire, and now I'm going to actually enjoy more so this glass of water that I was about to get. So, but what? And I'm thinking sometimes everything in corporeality could be exactly the same, and this tension could be built up. What causes one to create this tension? Is it only that desire for the future state that will bring about these situations?
It's importance for the future state. So, for example, let's say you don't think water is important, or you don't think the enjoyment of water is important. You'll just drink a cup of water. But if you want to enjoy the water, then you'll eat some chili peppers before. And be like, oh, where's water? And then when you drink it, you're like, oh, that's amazing. So the idea is that it all depends on the importance of the future. So if the future is important to you, then you'll awaken yourself to feel that posterior instead of being awakened by just present states.
But here the importance is directly related to the amount of pleasure you think you're going to get out of it.
Exactly. So the idea is that depending on the importance of that pleasure, you will be willing, you could say, to suffer the posterior.
But then if we're expecting reward,
willing to suffer.
you can, okay, but you can do that to advance until the barrier, but after, to make that transition, it's not the same. You're not doing it for the sake of pleasure anymore, for a feeling.
You have to cross the barrier because of feeling. The whole switch that you have to do to cross the barrier is to convince yourself that power is feeling. And if you don't do that conversion, then you can't cross the barrier. You have to cross the barrier out of feeling. You can't cross the barrier because you want power. The intention in order to bestow is after the barrier, not before. So you can't want to cross the barrier in order to bestow. You have to cross the barrier in order to receive, and then it gets inverted in order to bestow. What, Moshe?
No, I was just going to say, exactly. It's all about, before the barrier, it's Lalishma, and you have to work Lalishma in the fullest extent, which is basically just complete egoism. And basically, like you're saying, is basically convince your ego that power is filling. After you cross the barrier, things change. It's a complete flip-flop. It's not working with the ego anymore. It's just working now with the powers of bestowal and the screen,
And that's why the steps are very crucial, because if you say, what is going to be the future? It's going to be power. Oh, they'll do that now. It's like, no, you have to go through the steps and know when to invert and when not to invert. So before the barrier, you have to work egoistically. You have to. And if you don't, then you won't reach it. You won't have that intensity that you need.
Yeah, but both before and after the barrier, what's leading you is your desire for, for something better, for pleasure. Before the barrier, it's feeling. After the barrier, it's something else. But on both sides, it's the same desire for pleasure, isn't it?
Well, it's always pleasure, but the pleasure for what?
Doesn't matter. Pleasure.
Well, it does matter. At the end of the day, it does matter. So the idea is before the barrier, your pleasure is for filling, and after the barrier, your pleasure is for power.
Right.
So to know that the power that I want to acquire is so it can fill me.
That is true, but it's not called filling. Why do we say that? We say that external power is still called filling, and we say internal power, internal filling is power. So why do we have that distinction? Why is it we say that anything external is always going to be filling, and anything internal is always going to be power? So the idea is that anything you're seeing in reality, you're seeing like on a TV screen. So you're just seeing filling. It's filling your senses. You're just seeing a picture, you could say. So even if you're given the picture of that you're the king of the world, right? That's still filling. Since you're seeing with your senses, like watching a movie, right? But when you have that internal feeling, that is power. Why? Because there's tension involved. Anytime you have any kind of internal feeling or internal power, it's going to be tension. And tension is power. So you've got a passive and an active. So the more you're filled internally, there's tension. And the more you're filled externally, there's no tension.
Not to cross the barrier, I want that internal tension?
No.
Is that what no.
You want internal filling. The result will be that there'll be tension, but you don't have to do that. That's what the screen does. The screen creates the tension. The screen creates the tension using the reflected light. It's like you're receiving into reality, right, from reality. And what you're doing is you're blocking it. You're doing a restriction on it, and that causes the tension that you need to convert that from filling, you could say, to power.
But what I'm going to do first is work for external feeling. So until I can receive more.
What?
But before the barrier, the work is into getting as much external feeling as I can? As
much aspiration for external feeling.
Okay.
Right? Because you're not going to get it. It's in potential.
Okay.
And then that's when you can convert from lo lishma, which is not for a sake, to lishma, which is for a sake, because that's what the restriction and the screen gives you. But you can't act like you have a screen if you don't have a screen. So you have to want to make your life better physically. And then when you really want it, then that inversion will happen where you'll actually want it internally instead of externally. You want to basically we basically go through 4 stages. We go through receive in order to receive, right? Which is when I want filling for filling. Right? I do things externally. Why? Because I want filling. Then you've got bestow in order to receive, is where you're doing internal motions, you're collecting discernments, you're growing internally. Why? Because I want filling externally. I want a better life, I want business, I want to be successful, I don't want my boss to shout at me, I want a better life with my wife, whatever it is, right? So that's bestow in order to receive. You're bestowing, you're collecting discernments, you're growing internally, and you're advancing. Why? To have a better life. Then when you cross the barrier, then you reach bestow in order to bestow, which is where you're collecting discernments in order to grow your internal power. And then finally you've got receive in order to bestow, which is where you're actually enjoying life, but in order to grow your internal power.
Zakai, I agree with everything you said. I could say, but then also before the barrier, at some point, you come to a point that all you care about is that quality of bestowal. That's what you want, and that's that final stage of correction. So, I mean, but you're saying that that's a little bit premature. If you basically, when you get to that 4.4.4, you reach that point of like, I don't care, I need this quality of bestowal, and that's what I want. But that you can only say that when you reach that sort of final correction, right? Up until that point, it's still growing that egoism, growing that potential filling, you could say, for power.
But even then, why do you want it? Why do you want the power? You're right that you want the power. I agree with you. But why do you want the power?
Yeah, okay.
And that has to be fulfilling.
So all the way, even up until that last point before you cross the barrier, it's always going to be filling. It's always going to, okay.
And if you sort of like kid yourself that you want power, it's not going to work. If you're thinking wanting in order to bestow, because that's what it means. In order to receive is in order to receive filling. In order to bestow is in order to bestow power, which means add that tension.
So me telling myself that I'm in low lishma in order to achieve lishma, it's a joke because I'm not trying to achieve lishma really.
In the end, you will achieve lishma, but the reason, your intention, right, is still in order to receive filling. It's bestow in order to receive.
Yeah, but then I don't want to change that. Like I don't really want to stop receiving in order to receive because it's against my nature.
No, you don't. You've already moved from receive in order to receive to bestow in order to receive. You're collecting discernments, right? You're not trying to go out and do things physically. You're already doing the work. You're doing the work of collecting discernments. Your intention is still in order to receive filling. Why am I doing this? Well, because I want a better life.
And collecting discernment is considered a desire to bestow because it does not give you a feeling?
No, remember there's two parts. There's the action and there's the intention. So if I'm receiving in order to bestow, the action I'm doing is receiving, and the intention is in order to bestow. So I first start with receive in order to receive. That means the action is receiving, and the intention is in order to receive. Filling. Right? So it's filling for filling. Why do I go out and get a job? Because I want a better job. Why do I go out to a restaurant to eat better food? Right? So the idea is you're always doing physical actions for physical filling. Bestow in order to receive is where you're collecting discernment, so you're doing internal work, not external work. You're doing internal work. Why? In order to get physical pleasure.
What state do you start doing that?
So you start doing that, you do bestow in order to receive basically when you go from, it's gradual, right? So you're basically going in phase 2, in the middle of phase 2. You go from 2.2 to 2.3, that's when you start moving from doing physical work, physical actions, to start collecting discernments. It's gradual all the way to the barrier.
So do you think that 2.1, 2.2, phase 2, the early parts of phase 2 is what?
Actions.
But most of phase 2 is trying to emulate bestow in order to bestow.
No, they're trying to bestow in their quality of reception.
So what would you call that?
To receive.
How's that?
Because you're doing physical actions in order to make your physical life better.
Right. Well, it's more of like making the external your externality better, so that you can basically enjoy your filling.
Exactly.
Pretty much. Yeah. It's just like a different type of filling.
Even helping the poor is still called receive in order to receive.
Correct. Yeah. Okay.
Move from. Go on. No, go on.
But can we say that, after final correction, a person is doing all of those, doing everything that the writings speak about. However, in phase 2, it's a phase of wanting and actually thinking that you're performing those, but in reality not. And yes. Because it's not a mature concept, it's not clean.
Exactly. The problem that phase 2 does is that because they're trying to be like the Creator, and since the Creator is the quality of bestowal, and before the barrier, the quality of reception. So they say, what does the Creator do? The Creator bestows in the quality of bestowal. We're not the quality of bestowal, so what we're going to do, we're going to bestow in the quality of reception. So they think that's being like the Creator. So what do? They do physical actions in order to bestow. So they think, okay, so receiving means I'm giving to myself, to my physical body. So what does bestow mean? Bestow means I give to others. So, you've got in phase 1, which is basically to open a charity shop, right, and help people around the world or whatever it is. And then you've got the beginning of phase 2 where it says, no, it's not about actual physical stuff of giving people money and stuff. Well, it's about connection. It's about making them feel good, giving them a good time, feeling that connection, giving them that support, which is mutual guarantee, right? So it's all still doing an external action. And they think that the difference is towards who you're doing it. Are you doing it towards yourself, and then it's egoistic? Or you're doing it towards others, and it's altruistic? But in both situations, you're still doing receiving in order to receive. You're still doing physical actions, receive, in order to make your reality better. You could think of it like that.
And doing everything external, not internal, which is what the writings really say.
Exactly. But they make the mistake because they're just so used, because of the immature perception, they're just so used to using the physicality, the physical actions. They're so sure that it must be just an inversion of the actions. and not that it's something totally different, which is discernments, because they're just not used to using the discernment part.
So, so when somebody moves into 2.3, for example, they are beginning to collect discernments. Is that the first time that they are doing, their intention is to bestow, that is, they're collecting discernments, but they're doing it in order to receive? Is that where the cutoff line where you say this is when they start bestowing in order to receive?
Yes, so you could say it's gradual, remember, so the idea is that you start.
Yes.
Basically, 2.3 is when you feel the lack of,
Yeah.
these physical actions are not working out for me. And then you reach 2.4, which is, okay, I need to clean my concepts, which is collect discernments on human behavior patterns.
And this 2.3, it's the way that you just stated it. It seems like, you're just seeing it's not working out for you too. But this is truly a difficult, very difficult state for someone in phase 2 to be in. You've recognized how it's not working, and it's a very difficult state because you've committed to your society, and the thought of having divergent thinking from the society is a very big challenge, and then to find your way to what's next is very difficult. So this has got to be one of the toughest stages, I would think, for phase 2. In phase 2, that 2.3.
It is a very defining moment, and people can fall back into it because it just requires a lot of strength to be that individual. Because the idea is that if you're going to be basically shifting from being a normal person on this earth to shifting to a sense of self to the creator, you're going to have to be sensing yourself as that individual, which is going to look down on creation. And then you're going to need that separation, and you're going to need that tension. Think of it's like trying to jump in the air. That's basically tension, because our default is to be pulled back down onto the ground. So it's easy to plateau. It's not hard to plateau. It's easy to plateau. It's easy to fall into a shell because you're just constantly being pulled down. So if you just lose for a moment the importance of the goal and the importance of the environment to help you focus on the correct goal, you fall straight down back into 2.1 and 2.2, and you're just so sure that it's all about mutual guarantee and connection. And look, because that's what everybody else is doing. So that need to be that special, which is in phase 4, it's called the individual, which is called in Hebrew Yechidei Sgula, the special people. The special individuals. And to order to reach that, a person has to have an active point in the heart. They need to want to actively advance and not just go with the crowd. And that shift is it's hard for people because they're just so used to wanting to be more like the crowd mentality and not actually make, it's called making a name for themselves, but making a name for themselves internally, not externally.
So a lot of people leave at that stage as well. So many people leave, It's definitely a defining moment for sure.
At the end of the day, what will decide if someone will leave or not is whether, what normally causes a person to leave the society is two things. Either he leaves the society or the society throws him out. When he leaves the society, it's because he's fed up with the society and he doesn't express it to them, and basically leaves on his own accord, and then will mostly just return to corporeal things and try to cover up that pain that he feels. And the other option is that they get so frustrated with society, they start expressing it, and then the society basically throws them out. And those are the two options. So I'd say right line people externally tend to leave the society, and left line people tend to get thrown out of the society because they have a need to express that judgment. So they come to society and say, you're wrong, this is not correct, you're abusing the system, da 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 da. And then the society says, oh no, you have to annul to us, we decide what you do. And then they normally throw him out. While a right-hand person normally annuls and is frustrated, but doesn't express that to the society and will just leave quietly.
So when you're talking about Yaakov and Yosef being thrown while Abraham and Yitzchak living on their own accord?
Exactly.
Generally speaking?
Yes.
Zach, you got to add another option to that, because there is another option, and it's that, people can get frustrated and actually look for something else. Maybe not leave, but maybe look for more answers, look for deeper answers. Having deeper questions. And I feel like when you build that desire for that bit more that you need, again, that desire gets fulfilled.
So you are right. There is the third option of finding a phase 3 group. What that does is you're still going to experience that 2.3. You can't skip phases. But the thing is, because you've now got a group, you're still going to feel that frustration, but you're going to feel it internally instead of externally. So you're not going to express to the society you suck. Rather, you're going to express it internally. You're going to be like, I've got something better. And therefore, you don't need to express that frustration, but you still need to feel it internally. You still need to feel that distance. And if you don't feel that distance, then you're basically, you become, it's called a field dog. You're basically tying your sustenance to them. And then if that sustenance gets cut, you break it, it destroys you. It's your sustenance, it's your lifeline. And the idea is to actually become an animal where you're walking on the ground, and you might be eating from it, but you're not tied with your sustenance directly to it. It's not your lifeline. And then you've got the human, which is, looking towards the goal. His head is higher than his body. So with an animal, the head is normally on the same height as the body. But with a human, the head is higher than the body. He has an aspiration. He has a goal to actually reach.
I have a thought which is not clear to me, but thoughts for themselves, correct me if I'm wrong, are they considered a type of a feeling? Because basically the way I look at it is everything that I can grasp is a feeling inside the will to receive, including thoughts. So I'll stop here. Just want to hear what your thoughts about that.
That is true. That's why people can get stuck on knowledge, for example. Knowledge is feeling. So, then the question is, so what makes discernment different from knowledge? Why is it that if I just, learn new material of even Kabbalah, it's considered knowledge, but when I'm collecting discernments, that's advancement? What is unique about collecting discernments that's different from just collecting knowledge? And the difference is that, number one, with knowledge, you're not tying it to yourself. You're learning about things outside of you. So, for example, you're learning what happened to Moses, or you're learning some great intellectual Kabbalah material of why Nikudot Sag goes down below the tabor, and you're like, look, and here's the diagram of it. You see, I know all this information. Great feeling. With discernments, there's tension involved. Why is there tension involved? Because number one, you have to think that everyone's a robot. Right? There's none else besides him. And that means that everyone is just being played, and everyone's just a robot or a puppet. Right? So that already causes a certain tension, because you're having to treat, you're basically sucking the life out of your reality. You're making it lifeless. You're making it still. You're making it motionless. You're basically saying no one can actually decide anything on their own. I'm looking at a total static picture here. There's tension there already. But that builds your character. It builds your desire. It builds your internality in that process. Because where's going to be all that dynamic part? The dynamic is going to be internally. So internally, I'm going to have this most dynamic world. Externally, it's going to be dead. I'm going to see it for what it is. It's just a still image. There's no dynamicity. There's no color. You're sucking all the color from externality and putting all the color into internality. And what normally happens with knowledge is the other way around. You're increasing color. You're like, look at this book. Look at this information. Wow. Isn't that great what we learned in the lesson this morning? Now I know more. You're injecting color into reality. But when you're collecting discernments, you're actually extracting that color from reality and taking that color internally. You're sucking, you're stealing, it's called. You're stealing from your reality and making it internal. And that tension is exactly what builds it. And it takes those discernments of looking at human behavior and then seeing how everyone's a puppet, and how the creator controls everything, so how your subconscious is basically manifesting reality. And that starts to build your internal world and starts building your internal character and your internal power.
What's so important to really recognize is that the system, the way it's laid out, and I'm talking again about, the knowledge versus knowledge and discernments and experience, is that as you continue to progress, you actually are able to experience states and then go to like the format and say, yeah, I just experienced this. So you're identifying it for yourself. And once you get in the habit of that, doing the discernments, doing the internal work, you become like a self-guided. I mean, even though we use the group and sometimes we're not 100% clear on our states, but because it's so laid out and so many of us have experienced the system the way it's laid out, you can begin to gauge your own progress. You don't feel like you're just following a crowd. You recognize where you're at and you feel it. First you feel it, then you go and identify, oh, that's what I'm experiencing. Instead of, here's how it's laid out, now just memorize it. And I think that's just a different way of saying what you just expressed, Sakai.
I totally agree. Instead of, you could say, relying on your externality, you shift to relying on your internality. And that's why we call it independent on each other. So there is that dependency where we need our environment, which is externally, but we're doing it in order to make ourselves independent. And that is a direct opposition to what the society teaches, which is dependent on each other. The goal is not to reach independence. The goal is to reach dependency and never reach independence. The whole idea is to be dependent on the society until the day you die. And the idea here is, yes, there is a dependency. There's an initial dependency, but the goal is to reach that independency. And that's basically what you get when you reach end correction. You reach that sensation of independence. And you will still go to the environment, but you're going from a position of power and not from a position of a need of like, oh, I'm dependent on them. You're coming from an independent point now. You're like, I don't need you, but I want you.
And the beauty of that is that when you reach final correction, you want to be aligned with others in the path. It's not that you feel like you're stuck and you're afraid to depart, but that it's a complete opposite, that you want to be there to support and shake up and wake up those that are on the path and really focus on their development. It just happens. It's not something you like, okay, now I got to start thinking about other people. No, it's just a transition that happens inside of you. And that's just amazing to me.
And that's the whole idea, that instead of teaching to people all the time, you have to be good to others, you have to be good to others, you have to be good to others. The idea instead is to reach such self-empowerment that it just overflows. It's that idea of the cup of blessing. The cup of blessing is not that you're trying to fill everybody else's cup and then you're left with no wine in your cup. It is you so overfill your own cup, fill it to the brim, it starts overflowing to everybody else. And then you don't have a choice. It's not like, oh yes, the other day I helped somebody else with their advancement. Oh, oh well, I guess I have to because that's what I was told I have to do. No, it's like, I've got so much within me. I've got so much to express. I need to share it with others. I have no ability to keep within me. And if they don't allow me to express it, it'll cause me huge frustration. It'll cause me frustration not to bestow. So I'm not bestowing because, oh, well, you know, I was told to. I'm bestowing because I have to. Like, if you don't let me to bestow, you're causing me pain. And that's not the situation before where you're like, oh, I'm just being a nice guy. Look at me. I'm so altruistic that I'm being nice to others and I'm helping them clean their concepts. You reach a point where you're not being nice. You're doing it totally for yourself because it's a need. It's like, I need to share. It becomes second nature. So as long as it's a point where you're like, oh, look at me, I'm such a nice person, and I'm cleaning other people's concepts, and you know, I'm doing all this work. Oh, you see, I'm such a nice person. That means you haven't reached that second nature. Second nature is where, no, of course I'm not doing it for them. I'm doing it for me. If I don't share with them, if I don't clean their concepts, and if I don't help them grow, I'm going to be in pain. It's become second nature. Your nature now is the nature of the Creator, which has to bestow. Not because it's an optional thing of, well, I didn't have to, but look, I did it anyway because I'm such a nice person. That's not the nature of the Creator. The Creator doesn't think, you know what, I'm going to feel like bestowing today. Yeah, why not? That feels like a nice thing to do. No, it's just in constant bestowal. It's not got a question of, should I bestow today or not? The Creator always bestows. And if there's a situation where it has no one to bestow to, it's frustrated. It's in pain.
Is there anything in reality that, you know, I'm trying to imagine what it feels like, and the only thing that pops into mind is something that has to do with the relationship between a mother and a baby. Like, she really has to nurse the baby, otherwise it causes her pain. Is that anything that feels close to what you're describing?
Exactly. And there's the other example they give is of the cow. That the cow wants to give milk more than the calf wants to suckle.
I think it's even more, you take you let out oxygen and you have to bring it back in. It's so, you know, like Sakai said, second nature. You don't even think about it. It's just like breathing in and out. You've got to do one breath and then breathe in to fill the lungs again. It's an automatic.
When I'm imagining people that have gotten to the end of correction, I visualize different types, how they are operating differently. Some may bestow, I mean, will they all be doing the same thing, or each one of them would choose his own expression in order to bestow?
Each one has unique abilities that they will do their expression differently. So not everyone is going to be doing Zoom meetings. Other people will do different things. Other people might do one-on-one. Other people might be writing articles. Everyone has their different way of expression. And the idea is that there's enough expressions out there for everyone to have their part. The idea is that you're always going to have pain and pleasure. The question is, on what is that pain and pleasure? Is that pain and pleasure out of reception? Or is that pain and pleasure out of bestowing? So there is pain in bestowing. There's huge frustration when you're trying to help someone and they're fighting that advancement. It causes huge pain. But you're no longer having pain for the corporeal stuff. So your physical life, your corporeal life, perfect, no problems, everything's great. So what are you so frustrated about? Oh, I want the student to advance, and he doesn't want to advance. It causes me huge frustration. It's like, well, what's your problem? You've got no problems in your life, you know. And if you, it's like a rich man's problems, right? It's like a rich man going to a poor person and saying, "Oh, life is so hard. You know, I don't know where to put all my millions. You know, the bank will only receive so much money, and I have to figure out to find, you know, a bigger bank to invest my money. Oh, life is so hard." The poor person's like, "Give me your problems. I have no problem with that. I have different problems. My problem is I don't have food to eat." So the same thing, when a Kabbalist is complaining to an old person of his problems, the old person doesn't know what problem is that you're, like, what you should do is you should emotionally detach yourself. Why are you so attached to to your friends, to your students, to make them advance. You should detach yourself. You should just able to just help them advance, but without being so invested in them. You should remove that investment. It's like, I can't remove my investment from them. They're my organs. I need to help them advance. I feel their pain. And I feel my pain that I can't help them advance. And a normal person's like, well, why would you want that kind of dependency? Your dependency should be on your sustenance. Are you suffering whether you're getting more money, whether your business is successful, whether your wife is happy with you? That should be your dependency, not your students. And that's why it says that those that see the sorrow of the public get to be in the solace of the public as well. So the public are desires outside of you, and the more you invest in them and feel their sorrow, feel that pain, you also get to enjoy so much more than a normal person would ever enjoy in his life.
Can I steal another minute with regard to thoughts versus feeling?
Yes.
So when I'm thinking about it, this is what I have. At the end of the day, everything which is in our perception, is something that we can attain, comes through the will to receive. But when we get data of information there, we have two ways of relating to it. One is put it outside of us. Let's say I know about Galgalta and Enaim, for example, to a certain extent. I put it outside. It's knowledge. It's not inside. And the other option is to internalize it. Then it deserves the title of discernment. And then it changes my perspective. Is that anything close to a reasonable description?
Yes, so when it's changing your perception, that means you're taking that knowledge externally and investing it internally, and that changes your perception. Those are called discernments. Well, if it doesn't change your perception and you're just knowing more information, then that's called external knowledge.
All the information, those that I internalize as well as that I externalize, is at the end of the day coming from the will to receiving something.
Yes.
So we're actually using a certain kind of feeling, which is manifested as thoughts, in order to change our perspective and feel and get closer to the quality of bestow. But we're doing using feelings, which is a very specific type of feelings, which we call discernments. But at the end of the day, these are feelings as well.
Well, the idea is that if you're not going to enjoy cleaning of concepts, you're not going to clean much concepts now, are you? You can't clean concepts in pain. You can only clean concepts in pleasure.
Why are you saying it now?
Well, what you said of that, discernments also give pleasure. That is true, and they need to give pleasure. You can't. One of the problems that 2.3 has is that there's so much in pain they can't clean concepts, and that's why only 2.4 is where you clean concepts. You're like, but they have an active point in the heart. Why can't they clean concepts in 2.3? Well, because they're in pain, and if they're in pain, you can't clean concepts. You can only clean concepts in pleasure, and that's why one of the advantages of the group is to actually reduce that pain, and then you can actually clean concepts. And that's why it's actually very important in an environment, in the group, to feel comfortable with talking with each other. Because if you don't feel comfortable with talking with each other, you're not going to be able to clean concepts. You can only clean concepts when you have trust with each other, where you know that people aren't going to attack you. You feel comfortable with the group. That's where you can clean concepts. But if there's tension in the group of people attacking each other, you can't clean concepts in that kind of environment.
Because it feels to me like cleaning concepts is really, at the end of the day, it feels like having an inner discussion, but the inner discussion includes external people, yet is felt like an inner discussion if indeed you trust them and you feel as if they are parts of you, even though they are external to you.
Yes. The idea is that emotion is the glue of the mind. The things that we remember are things that we have emotion tied to them. So the importance of investing emotion in a group is to allow that any kind of discernments or any kind of information you collect will be internalized much easier because you've got that emotion for it to attach to. All right, I think we'll stop here and enter the after party.